Thank you so much. So I'm going to maybe do something slightly different today. I was asked to be an expert here, and I'm a very humble person. So I actually went through many of your questions first, and I asked ChatGPT what he thinks about it. So we both had a discussion this morning, and I'll share with you my perspectives and his or her or its perspective. We don't know the pronoun yet. So first of all, I will summarize 30 years in 3 minutes. It's going to be 3 minutes, Rachel, not 8 minutes. No. I will basically tell you a little bit about myself, but you're not here to hear about myself. You're here to learn what you will do, not what I've done. I can tell I've made many mistakes. That's why she calls me wise. I just had many mistakes, but I won't read the slides. You obviously, you can tell by the timeline that it started in 1989. So I started my career when I was 3 years old, as you can do the math by my age today. The most important thing that I take from my journey is that you see the color codes. Those are kind of locations. I've been in many different places. I was born in Brazil. I moved to the US, went back to Brazil, came to Israel, and I'm doing some study and work in Portugal as well. Again, I've done lots of different things, but most of my career was at Microsoft. I was 15 years at Microsoft after my MBA, 13 years in the US in corporate, and then 3 years here in the Middle East and Africa. I won't go through my whole CV. The thing that I think is more important in my CV is this photo. I use it on my LinkedIn, and there's a reason why I do that in every presentation. Is because of that pretty photo of Michael Jordan sweating and that quote. And I will tell you just 30 seconds why I like it so much. When I came to Israel in 2016, I won't tell you the whole story, maybe one day, but I received a job offer to return to Microsoft. The job was actually not in Israel, it was in Dubai. And I'll remind you of the timeline. It was before Abraham Accord, so it wasn't a very trivial thing to do. But I did it, and this is my keynote in Jordan. I was hired to do something that was quite innovative at the time for Microsoft, to build a digital transformation team. I had a very short timeline to prepare my presentation, which was not a presentation, was actually the whole plan for the year, and to hire the team and to start building the execution plan. And when I was about to go on stage, I realized I had this thing, I don't know if you heard, called the imposter syndrome. If anyone ever heard this term, and I realized, oh my God, why am I telling all these 800 people that I know how to do it? I don't really know how to do it. And eventually I saw this quote from Michael Jordan that says, I've made so many mistakes in my career. And I said, well, if Michael Jordan can make some mistakes, I can make some too. So that was sort of the main lesson of my career. And that's where I normally like to start. This is half a joke. This is my personal disclaimer after working with legal many, many years. Those are my opinions here. So I will share with you some studies, some sources you can go check on your own. I'm expressing my own personal opinions from my experience throughout this time. So what I'll do today is I'll try to speak much less than I speak normally, because I want us to have time for a lot of Q&A. As a matter of fact, I did read all the questions that you posed, and I didn't include all the answers here, but I tried to include as many as possible. And again, we all here try to predict our future here, but there's many quotes from smarter people than me that says you're better off if you try to create and invent your future than try to predict it. So here's what we're gonna do today. I wanna maybe spend maximum 10, 15 minutes, probably less than that, just giving you some basics of when I try to mentor somebody or coach someone, and what I've learned from my coaches, how I think you should think about setting yourselves for success in high tech, in particularly in Israel. And then I will just go straight to a lot of the hot topics that I saw in the questions. A disclaimer, not all of them are there, but I'm very happy to talk to any of them. So I think that the main thing that I usually start with people, and I went through this journey 10 years ago, is what do you really want to do, right? At the same time that we all need jobs and need parnassa and need to make an earning, sometimes we're just looking for a job and an income. Sometimes we're looking for a career, but it doesn't matter. You need to really know where you want to go. Maybe you won't get there straight. Maybe it will take you a few years to get there. But if we don't know where we want to go, then we can't really start to build our routes, and we can't get people to help us. right? So that's why it's so important. The second part is many of you had great questions about Israel, right? I've been here for 7 years. I'm married to an Israeli. I've been here working with Israeli startups for several years, but I also have my own questions, and I have my own mentors and friends who have been here for 30 years who also have their own questions. So it's important that we actually understand, before we even understand Israel, we understand ourselves. What are your superpowers? You're all coming from different backgrounds. I saw in the survey you guys come from Russia, France, Latin America, whatever in the world. Maybe it's a bit awkward when you arrive in Israel. I'm not fluent in Hebrew. I don't understand the culture. How do I position myself? On the other hand, you have a lot of skills, and I can tell you for sure because I hired many Olim in my life here. You have a lot of superpowers that you don't know are superpowers in Israel, but they are. So we'll talk a bit about them. So again, if I were to really summarize sort of the 4 main steps that I see in this journey, wherever you are right now, but some people skip the beginning of the journey, by the way. See, it doesn't start with Israel, it starts with yourself, right? Really know yourself. I talk to so many people and I try and tell them, how you land a job here, how do you improve your abilities? And I ask them many questions and they don't know. They say, I don't think I have any special skills. I don't think I have any relevant experience. And I did some exercise with some of them and I asked them, ask your friends, ask your colleagues from years ago. I've done that. And ask them, what did you do well in the past? What was the main thing that they appreciate about you? What are the things that they think you need to work on? And they got amazing feedback. And they said, wow, I didn't know people think all of that about me. And I said, okay, so first you need to get a little bit of history so you can start projecting that to your future. The second part is don't become obviously self-centric. It's wonderful that you know about yourself and your skills, but this is kind of a sales and marketing exercise. Even if you're an engineer and you really dislike sales and marketing, I tell my mentees, doesn't matter. When you go into a recruiting process, when you go into a job placement process, make no mistake, this is a sales and marketing activity. And as a sales and marketing professional, the first thing you need to know before knowing your company, your product, your service, whatever it is, which is yourself, know your audience. Who am I talking to? What kind of companies that? What kind of culture they have? Many other things. So that's a good start. So you know yourself, you know what you have to offer. Now you know your audience, you know what they want. Hopefully that's a relatively good match. But now you can't do that alone. I mean, you can, but this talk today is a short talk, but it's not about, many people ask me questions and I'll go through them soon. Is it possible to work in Israel without knowing Hebrew? Is it possible to get in a job without everything is possible in life, but it's also a game of probabilities, right? I studied psychology and computer engineering, and I like the combination of both. Yeah, you can do anything you want, but you may get there in 2 years or in 2 days or in 2 weeks. You may get 2x the salary or half the salary. So everything is possible. So try and optimize your chances. I mean, the artificial intelligence space, I think about optimization every day. So you can't do that alone, or you can, but you shouldn't. And this is something else. Build your allies. Now, your allies are these people here, Gvaim alumni, Gvaim mentors, your prep coaches. But not only here, right? So you're going to have a lot of allies, and we'll talk a little bit about building networks. And I wrote an article about it in the past. I have to find it, but I think it's a very important topic. And then the fourth one, I won't play here the connecting the dots video from Steve Jobs. If any of you have not heard it before, I really recommend it. It's very inspirational. It's very short. But really connect the dots from all your past experiences, from where you are now, where you want to go. And you will find that there's some pieces of the puzzle that you can put together and build a really good story. By the way, does anyone recognize this guy over here who looks puzzled, like doesn't know exactly what to do, looks confused maybe? Anyone knows who that is? So he is from the generative AI world. I just built him this morning with DALL-E. If you never heard of that, I think by now you all heard about OpenAI. We'll talk a little bit about it. I actually said, give me a picture of a confused guy who seems to not know who he truly is. Make him look cool, an immigrant in search for his identity. So those are some options that DALL-E gave me. If you never use DALL-E, it's the older brother or sister of ChatGPT. I really recommend it to play. It's not just fun stuff. It's kind of part of what we're talking about here. So now again, I'll go quickly through here because I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is really the basics, right? As we want to go into so again, very quickly and basic, we talked a little bit about the steps, but you know, as you whatever you are in your journey, I mean, you really need to do research. And I tell people, if you come to a job interview, you come to talk to a potential employer, mentor, whoever, and you haven't done your research, that's a shame. No, right? So we have great tools today. I'm not here selling anything. I'm no longer on a sales quota for Microsoft, but LinkedIn is a great tool. LinkedIn is a great tool. If you have the premium license, you can do amazing things. Have many other tools there. You have ChatGPT. Do your research and write down things. I had a very tough manager at Microsoft, the hardest manager I ever had. And everything I told him, he says, put it on paper, put it on paper. And I had to type everything. And I said, why do I need to do it? I already explained it to you. And he says, until it's on paper, it's not real. We talk, we forget about it. At least I do. I don't know about you. So use great tools. We'll talk a little bit about technology. But again, do your research, write it on paper. Every time you come into a meeting or an interview, come prepared. And then most importantly, once you finish it, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts in your head. Why did he ask me this weird question? Why didn't I mention that? Write it down immediately. Write it down immediately. You will not remember it tomorrow. You have a bottle of wine to relax. Tomorrow you forget about it, and you will not learn from that. So this is kind of something I learned here from the military. I didn't really serve here, but I took some executives to training with the Israeli Air Force. Debrief. Really learn and incorporate into your system how to do this better. So moving in faster because I really want to get to Q&A. I think those are kind of, again, the 5 steps, and forgive me those who don't like marketing, but understand your brand and your audience, who you are, be authentic. Get your facts, right? Again, like I said, most people don't really remember. They list in their CVs or LinkedIn every single responsibility they have. I was responsible for sales of this product. I was responsible for marketing plans. Honestly, I don't really care what you're responsible for. I want to know what you've done with it. So please give me some facts. Be specific, right? Don't say, oh, I did a great job in a marketing campaign. Tell me, well, what was the outcome? What did you do to change the campaign, and what was the result, right? So give it the context also. How much budget you had? What was the thing? We'll talk a little bit about it. And number 4, again, don't just tell me that. Show me that. If you want to have a picture, a number, a graphic, a photo, I don't really care what it is, but try. You know, we are visual people. We want to visualize kind of what that experience looks like, and this is kind of the oddest part of it. Know the end at the beginning, meaning when you're writing a book or a movie. I'm not really a movie writer or something. I have friends who are in Hollywood. You kind of know more or less how it will end. You may change your idea in the middle and change the end, but know where you want to get and kind of reverse engineer and backwards and try and incorporate that. And this is, again, the last few slides about more theoretical. I wanted to tell you, when you fail to plan, your planning to fail. That's a very famous sentence from Benjamin. I usually quiz people, but you already have the answer. Here's Benjamin Franklin. But again, I had a coach who told me you can change your plan every week, every month. I don't really care. It's not written in stone, but you have a plan. Have a plan, update your plan, and I can't emphasize it enough. Again, you're trying to understand more about Israelis and about the high-tech ecosystem. They're trying to understand you. So every time you miss a chance to tell your story in a concise and compelling way, you're missing a big opportunity. The second part is, again, get the facts, right? So we talked about the who, what, where, when, why. Again, it's not writing a book about your life. It's just to getting those very short stories that can get you ahead of the game. And I'll talk about it in a little bit. This is probably the thing that revolutionized my life. Yeah, it was not ChatGPT, it was not artificial intelligence, but I learned that maybe 12 years ago. I was at Microsoft. I had a great career. I was in the US, had my dream job, but somehow I was getting to a point that I said, I don't want to spend all my life in corporate. I've been here for almost 15 years. I want to go work in startups. I'm not sure I want to stay in Seattle for all my life. I want to live in Israel. And I had a coach, some Jewish guy from my synagogue in Issaquah, was a great business guy in New York. And I told him my story. He says, look, I'll coach you, but I will teach you something important. It's called SAR. I had no idea what SAR was. I thought it was some bacteria, or I didn't know what the hell it was. And it says situation, action, results. Tell me in very short ways about a situation in your life. You had this project. It was very challenging because of XYZ reasons. Action, you did some analysis and you decide to do something. What exactly did you do? And results. After you've done that, what changed? What was the before and the after in the company, in the project, etc.? It sounds super simple. 90% of people that I met, including myself 10 years ago, wouldn't think that way, would just start telling many statements about their jobs, their experiences, why they want to work here, but not really tell them in a story that I could assess what are your real strengths, what do you stand for, and so on. And again, we're getting to the end of this theoretical part, and I'll explain to you why I did it. But once you're ready, now you know who you are, you know what you want, you have your collection of facts and stories. Sounds like you have all your guns and you can go to war. You know, you got to get people engaged. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, and again, another thing that I learned in a hard way, is that, you know, I was more than a decade in the same company, so I wasn't interviewing externally. Once the first time that Google called me for an interview or something, I was massacred because I wasn't so into the whole interview process. And I asked him what's going on, and he says, "Look, you need to really engage. This is not a one-way thing. It's not an employer deciding are you qualified to work here or not. It's not a one-way road. This is you." Being effective at engaging them in your story, making them interested in your set of experiences, and also you evaluating if this is a place where you want to work. So again, there's a sense of power and control. You know, I'm looking for a job. This guy's interviewing me and he has a job. So I just should just answer his or her questions. That's a big, terrible mistake. This is a conversation, and especially in Israel, now I'm going to talk about Israel. People are not hiring amen people. They usually hiring people for jobs that they don't know how to explain very well. They probably don't know the answers for your questions. They probably have no idea how they'll get the result, but they want somebody who has what it takes to do it. And that's a combination of, yes, if you have done that before and you have the right skills and experience, that's wonderful. It's not always possible that you have the exact same experience, even for the fact that you came from another country, right? So theoretically, you could say you had the exact same experience, but it was in Russia, it was in Brazil, it was in France, Argentina. That's a question mark, but that doesn't mean that you're not qualified. It means that you need to convince them that because you have all those attributes, you'd be able to do that for him or for her as well in Israel, right? So again, you need to engage people in a discussion. You need to ask questions. You need to know when to speak and when to listen. And finally, again, the most important thing is none of us has all the answers, right? This is a picture I got from the head of innovation of a bank in Brazil where I do some advisory work on innovation. And I really liked the idea of, you know, we don't have a perfect map for the future, right? We try to use Waze and some other things to guide us. How do I get to point 8? Now there is another mecha. How do I get the hell out of here? I live close to Kaplan, by the way, so I can't go out most of the days. But, you know, we mostly have, hopefully, a general direction. I know that I don't want to work in agriculture. I want to work in high tech, more specifically in sales. And we'll talk a bit about it. Maybe sales and biz dev, also very big words. What exactly you want to do? Do you want to be an account manager? Do you want to be an SDR? Do you want to be a customer success manager? We'll talk a bit about it, but hopefully you have a general direction. Maybe you can be a bit flexible, but if you have a direction, you can start sort of leading people towards that direction and do some fine tuning. Now, I ended the boring part, but it was important to get it out of the way. And I wanted just to go straight, rather than lecture you guys, I wanted to start from the questions and maybe share some perspectives about them. Again, I couldn't include all of them here, so I'll go through some of them. And then I think we can open for many as well. I want this to be more interactive. And again, I wanted to put a little disclaimer here. Again, I'm not a lawyer here. It's not a legal disclaimer, but for every question, and I read every single question, if we were to really answer it properly, the answer would be, it depends, right? So I don't want to answer it depends for everything. So there's a yes or no, but, and there is a qualification there. So, sorry, somebody is not on mute. Maybe you can mute it. So the first part is, of course, I'm using obviously my own set of experiences and personal experiences, but also some existing studies and research there. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about it. If you haven't heard of well, I won't embarrass. Who has heard of ChatGPT? Maybe that's a better question.
I guess all of us.
All of you. Who has used ChatGPT?
I work with it.
Okay, so again, I work actually in the space of AI, which is very close to generative AI. I've been using ChatGPT for work, and frankly, I've been learning a lot from other people on LinkedIn on different and better ways to use it. So we'll talk briefly about it, but whether you are a recruiter, a marketer, a salesperson, a candidate for interviews, it is, of course, as any technology in early stage has limitations. It's not 100% accurate, but it has some amazing power if you know how to use it. So I can give you some hints. I'm not the guru here, but I've been learning a lot. But I do encourage you, all of you, if you're not there yet, we use this saying. I work with a lot of physicians. I work in AI for healthcare mainly, and also with data scientists. And we say we're not going to replace data scientists and physicians with AI, but the physicians and data scientists who know AI very well, and we'll replace those who don't know. So I think for every professional here, it's something that you probably want to understand how you can apply that to your job. So let's go straight to the questions. For how long did I talk? Okay, not long enough. So first question I like to get out of the way, and again, my own opinion, so everyone has theirs. Can I survive in Israel? Basically, you can see here I copy pasted maybe about 5 or 6 versions of the question, but all of them are, can I survive without Hebrew? And I'm paraphrasing very poorly some of them. And again, before I give my opinion, I went to ChatGPT and I asked for some studies, and I found one study that I actually had read before, but I forgot, which is the World Economic Forum. This is, for those who don't know, one of the leading organizations worldwide about the future of jobs, and I'll share with you 1 or 2 slides later. Again, communication and language skills are one of the top 10 skills needed for success. Again, communication and language are related, but not necessarily equal, as you probably know. I know many people who are native native Hebrew speakers, but don't quite understand the culture because maybe they grew up in the US, but the parents are Israeli. But nevertheless, I'll go straight to the answer. Language really matters and culture really matters. We'll talk about it. So can you get a job in high tech without Hebrew? Yes, you can. And again, I'll just share my own little experience here. My first job out of Microsoft, I was hired to be a VP sales and customer success and biz dev in a clean tech startup. And I had to restructure the whole sales team. And obviously, we're all biased. We talk about bias, and AI is biased, but it's not AI has bias. We have biases. And my bias was towards Olim. So I was the first guy to bring a bunch of Olim there. I said, guys, if you're in sales, our clients are not in Israel. We need people who speak different languages and who understand different cultures. So I brought a guy from Holland, somehow still likes to be connected with me nowadays. Now that we all left the company, it was acquired by Google. I hired a guy from Mexico who spoke Spanish and English and so on. So it is possible, especially if in sales, it is possible. Is it something I should feel very comfortable about? Great, so that's it. So I don't need my ulpan anymore. I'd say definitely not. And then I'll give you just 2 reasons for that out of many. Number 1, when I joined, I was a member of the senior management team. All the others were founders or people who A, didn't speak English very well, not always ready to speak good English, if you haven't noticed, and B, obviously, even if they did, preferred, actually they switched all the management meetings to English just because of me. So in the beginning, I said, oh, how kind they are. That's great. They're so inclusive. Now we speak English. Then I realized I'm being a rock in their shoes. I mean, I'm making them speak English every Sunday morning on the management meeting. And maybe I should learn Hebrew because we're in Israel rather than force them all to learn better English. So again, that's just one of the examples. We would have survived with meetings only in English because at that time my Hebrew was really, really poor. But I did 2 ulpanim. My Hebrew is still way far from being perfect, but I now go to meetings and I let the management talk in Hebrew. When I don't understand something, I ask, and they know that I don't understand everything. But I sometimes speak in English if I don't know how to express myself in Hebrew. But again, it's just in the long term. Think about it. Think about your work dynamics. You certainly can be hired with other languages and do okay. In the long term, you create some limitations for yourself, for your team. So I definitely encourage everyone to focus on improving Hebrew very seriously. Secondly, there was a question about the top cultural differences in the Israeli high tech. And that's a topic for another hour. We don't have that time now. But I took just a couple of, actually 2 slides from a different presentation that I gave more focus on that. And I'll just speak very high level. This is Osnat Lotman. This is an Israeli woman. Her mother is Brazilian. She grew up in Israel and worked in the US. I met her when I moved to Israel. She wrote a book called Israeli Business Culture. It's a great book. She's in her, I don't know, 6th edition. And I actually took a group of executives from Brazil for the bank that I work with to do a workshop for in February here. It was really amazing. So I won't summarize like half a day in half a minute, but those are kind of the main pillars that she writes. Israel, the culture in Israel is a lot more informal. Depending where you come from, like in Brazil, if I will, or in Latin America, if I go to Chile or anywhere and you want to talk to a director at Microsoft, there's a sort of protocol and you know, there's all kinds of hierarchy things that in Israel probably don't exist. Number 2, people in Latin America are so polite, but so polite that it takes them 1 hour to tell you no, and you're still not sure if that's a no. And so it's confusing. I traveled to Norway, for example, and they would end the meeting that was supposed to last an hour in 15 minutes, shook my hand and said, "Thank you, Mr. Rubinstein, for flying to Oslo. We're not going to do any business with you, but you're welcome to stay longer if you want." And I said, wow, that's a rude guy. And then I realized that's the nicest guy I ever met because he gave me 45 minutes to use the restroom, drink some soda, and prepare for my next meeting. So thank you for that. Risk-taking, I guess it's a longer topic, but obviously I think from every angle you look at, people are a lot more risk takers in Israel than in many other countries. Again, I'm comparing to Latin America, but you can compare to whatever other country you want. Most likely, we take a bit more risks, are ambitious, entrepreneur, loud. I guess you got the loud part, and improvisational. So unlike Americans, or Germany, where everything's planned and organized, not so creative sometimes, but very planned and organized. Here's the opposite, very creative. There's no planning or no organization. So you have to find the right balance there. I guess chutzpah. Anyone didn't hear about chutzpah? Chutzpah is more famous than ChatGPT, I guess. No, I think so. So this is Inbal Ariel. She's also an Israeli entrepreneur. I got to participate in a focus group with some Olim a couple of years ago, and got you know, to preview the book and read it before it was launched. I guess I don't need to explain what chutzpah is. For most of you, if you have questions, let me know. But again, most cultures like Asia or Latin America, chutzpah may be a negative thing. It's considered rudeness. For Israelis, chutzpah is actually a matter of pride. Ha ha ha! I had only 30 seconds, but I asked him if he wants to buy this or not. And you know, you have to understand that you have to find your own style, but you really need to work on it. You're gonna have to take that chance of 30 seconds in the elevator and literally make it work for you. I want to go to the next question that's very popular, and that's about referrals. That's one I have a very strong opinion. It's not just an opinion, it's my own personal experience. As I said, I worked for Microsoft for a long time, and I'm using Microsoft just an example because I worked there for many years, but I worked for many other companies after that. And we had an employee referral program where, you know, you can refer someone and get, I don't know, $1,000 or whatever the amount is, I don't remember. Most companies in Israel have it. Amdocs has it. Many, even startups, maybe not so early stage, but many companies here have that. Now, I would tell you the worst way to apply to a job is what I used to do when I just moved to Israel. Just go online or LinkedIn. Oh, that looks perfect. I'm going to fine tune my CV and boom, press the button, submit my CV. Terrible idea. Really terrible idea. It's the worst thing you can do with your life. Seriously, go watch Netflix. Don't do that unless you're in complete desperation, which is not a good thing. Always, you know, people say in the world you have 5 degrees of separation for anyone. You are like have 4 people in between you and Elon Musk or whoever you want to talk to. In Israel, they say it's 1 degree. Your mother knows his mother, or your auntie knows his auntie, or I'm sure you're going to find somebody who works in the company. Kvaim will help you. Somebody will help you. So try and find somebody who works there. Your best friends, girlfriends, daughter has a neighbor who works there or knows somebody who works there. I know it sounds a little bit like a dodgy path to take. Again, it's not about nepotism. Simply when you do that, there's 2 things that happen. One is, forgive me, the HR people in the room, but I'll say the truth. Like HR is sometimes a real black box. If you don't know, many companies use automated system for tracking CV, so which means that your CV may be automatically dismissed, so nobody will even read it. It's not that they will read it poorly; they will not even read it. So when you do that, you sort of force a recruiter to read it, because now it's an internal employee that put it there and says, "Hey, I think Beny could be a good fit. Take a look." Now they have an obligation to look at it. Okay, so you're making them work a bit harder. Okay, now I need to go for this CV as well. At least at Microsoft, they had to at least give you a call for 15 minutes. They don't need to hire you. They don't need to do anything, but they need to at least give you an opportunity to kind of have access to the process. Let's put it this way. So it doesn't guarantee you getting the job, of course, but it sort of makes much higher chances that at least you will be considered for the process, which in many cases you're not. So again, there's other reasons for that. I can tell you more, but I think that at the end of the day, can you get a job without referral? Yeah. My first job out of Microsoft, I found on LinkedIn. I applied in the way that I told you that was the most pathetic way. I eventually got the job after 3-4 months of interviews and negotiations and references and whatever, and I got a nice offer. But it wasn't the easiest route. It can work, but I would definitely encourage you to try and use refer. By the way, the person who referring you is getting some money as well, so it's not just doing a mitzvah, but it's getting some parnasah, so it's a win-win. Now, let's see how much time we have. So now that's the topic that people asked. Silicon Valley Bank is collapsing, the world's collapsing, political instability, blah, blah, blah. And some guy wrote it, wrote in a very interesting way the question. Said, she quoted the program says he'll provide practical insights to thrive in Israel's booming tech industry, and says, but Israel's high-tech industry is in decline right now, isn't it? What do we do in such a crisis situation? So I copy-pasted it because it was an interesting way to ask the question. It has a bit of chutzpah, but it was very good, whoever wrote it. So again, very, very long topic. I actually recorded a video. Unfortunately, it's in Portuguese because it's for Brazilian magazine, but if you happen to know Portuguese, you can listen to it. It's just 5 minutes long. It's on YouTube. But the short answer to that is, if there is a crisis, there is a crisis for sure. It's a global crisis. For those who are following the news, I have many former colleagues at Microsoft were laid off. Microsoft doesn't normally lay off people. Amazon, Google had this, amazing perks and this and that. So I've went through their process twice and cut off a lot of people. So there is a crisis in high tech. I wouldn't say it's a crisis. There is an adjustment phase. There's a lot going on, and I don't need to tell you what's going on in the world. Just open the news. From the Ukraine war that started a year ago to everything else you're hearing now, Silicon Valley Bank, etc. So there's kind of a global crisis. I would say actually the economic crisis in the US. I just spoke with somebody who's at Wharton now. She's in Israel, studying there half an hour before this call. She said she thinks the economic impact relatively speaking, the US is even harder than in Israel. But nevertheless, we're not here to talk philosophy. Whether you're going to call it a crisis or not, we are in a tipping point, I would say. We are in a point where companies had to make some adjustments. Both startups and very large multinational corporations cut off a lot of people. But as people say, in crisis, there is always an opportunity, which means that many of them already started to hire. They're just going to hire new talent, different strategy. But there will be many opportunities. Of course, you have to compete with talent that used to be employed, who now it's not, so makes you work a little bit harder. But again, the opportunities are there. I asked also ChatGPT for its opinion because I wasn't sure if you guys would like my opinion. ChatGPT says, nope, the Israeli high-tech sector is not in crisis, so go figure out. It says it remains a vibrant and growing industry with a strong startup ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. Here's the areas that he suggested you to pursue. I kind of agree, not 100%. Cybersecurity, AI, machine learning, well, I'm there. Data science and analytics, I'm there as well. Software development, I used to be there. And cloud computing, that was my bread and butter at Microsoft. So clearly, those are not vertical industries. I guess the question was more, shall I go to climate tech or ag tech or whatever? We can talk about that, but I think there is tons of opportunities everywhere. Again, we're going through a wave, but I think it will improve. By the way, I have a link here. I can share the presentation later. There is a new article on Calculus that talks in depth about all the economic factors, GDP. For those who like numbers or economists, you can read it. It's actually not that bad compared to the rest of the world. And this is, on a positive note. Out of the negative news that you get, this is Israel was ranked the 5th highest producer of unicorns in the world. Another article just came out and said it was named the 2nd strongest startup ecosystem in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, just behind London. So there's quite a lot of good news. You need to find them because they're buried in the bad news. So don't worry about it. So one more question or two, and then I will open for you guys. This came also from 3 different people at least that I saw, or actually this was one person who sneaked in 3 questions in one question. It was very clever as well, a lot of chutzpah. That's a long question, but what are the skills and qualities that you think are most important to achieving success in Israeli high tech? Again, I want to take a step back. When we talk about high tech, there are technical positions and non-technical positions, right? Technical positions, as you know, probably software engineering, testers, etc. I apologize for the time. We'll talk about a lot of the technical positions. There are many questions about it. Maybe that could be a different session. But for the non-technical positions, sales, marketing, business development, legal, I would say, of course, technical expertise is only relevant for the technical ones. But for most of the positions, in reality, if you take out the core qualifications, right? If you are a digital marketer, you probably need to know how to manage SEO, PPC, whatever it is that you are applying for. That's kind of obvious. But the generic abilities, as I was talking about, culture. Number one, creativity. I mean, things here are not fully planned, so you have to be creative. You also need to be adaptable because even if your job description is very detailed, it's probably going to change very soon. Communication skills, we talked about it. Maybe you're not fluent in Hebrew, but you somehow need to know how to connect to people, communicate. By the way, if you're not very good in Hebrew, that's not the end of the world. I hope you are very good in English, because if you're not very good in Hebrew and not very good in English, then we have a real challenge. I would suggest that you work on either Hebrew or English. And again, entrepreneurial mindset, etc., etc., etc. Common mistakes, I can talk about them in a minute. And how do you stay motivated? I'll also talk about it in a second. Oh, and I put also the response from ChatGPT. You can read it later if you want. So, biggest mistakes. To me, that's the number one. Anyone has not read this book? I recommend it. I read it when I was a kid, but there's a movie also. It's called Alice in the Wonderland. Pretty famous story. And this is one of the biggest mistakes. If you ever saw the video, the movie, or read the book, you know that there is this part where Alice is going somewhere and she finds this crazy cat with a clock and asks him, where do you want to go? And she says, I don't know. So he says, well, then it doesn't matter. Take the right or the left, doesn't really matter, right? So know where you want to go. It's good to be adaptable and flexible, but do your research. I mean, I was talking to Rachel before this session. I don't have a slide for that, but I wanted to, if we have time, talk about specific career paths. Even within sales, there's so many different roles, and I do spend time with people explaining them. Some of them went to this sales course, which is really nice. Then also with Nefesh B'Nefesh in organizations, and I know that they understand it better. But still, there's a lot of questions and doubts about what's within marketing, what's within sales. And I think people need to really understand where they're going rather than just throwing big words there. And I think the last one, I kind of gave the hint already, but somebody even asked this question. I'm not sure I understood the question, but how can ChatGPT enhance recruiting of talents outside of LinkedIn? I don't know if this person is a recruiter trying to be a better recruiter using ChatGPT. If it is, then probably I won't cover it today, but there's some interesting content on that I can point you to. But as I said, there is no question that large language models, for those who don't know, is something that's been in the academia for many, many years. Since 2015, we've been sort of seeing a lot of development there, but just now there was this whole boom in the ChatGPT story. But yeah, it will affect many jobs. I think the first people who are very worried are content writers. Again, I'm not saying ChatGPT will replace completely content writers, but content writers should probably know how to use it to get better results and faster. But there's many different roles, even in legal. Many law offices already using it. Think about any kind of analyst job that has to do a lot of research, collect articles, summarize long papers. You can do it very well with ChatGPT if you know how to use it. So again, it won't replace people, but it will be a great tool for them. So it really matters. Here's one example. I have many, by the way. If you want to check, I sometimes share on LinkedIn things that I find very interesting. I'm not the author, by the way. I'm just sharing. But this is one of the guys that did a very quick thing with ChatGPT just to redo your LinkedIn profile. You used to spend a lot of money and time paying consultants to do it for you. Now, you can get somebody to help you a bit, but you can follow some specific steps there, and you can improve quite a lot your LinkedIn profiles with very simple steps. And ChatGPT can help you do that. I guess the last one that I'll go through from the list, if I'm not mistaken, is a question from somebody in South Africa. And that one that I particularly like because I also suffered with this one. So I like the questions that I should have known 10 years ago. Nobody told me that. He said, or she again, how long before making Aliyah should I start applying for jobs? Now, I'll tell you what not to do, which is what I did. I started, I don't know, maybe more than a year before I wanted to move to Israel, send my CV and blah, 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 do all this stuff. And guess what happens? Eventually, I landed some really nice interviews for jobs that I really wanted, but I was still living in the US. I think I was still working for Microsoft, if I'm not mistaken. And clearly, I was not in Israel. I had not made Aliyah yet. And the moment that this kind of process became hot, this person says, I don't know, it was a Wednesday, and said, oh, can you come tomorrow morning to have coffee in Netanya? So I'm thinking, shit, I'm in Seattle. I don't know how to get to Netanya so quickly. So I had to tell him, hey, actually, can we make it a Zoom call, a Teams call? And then he said, wait, are you not in Israel? And I said, nope, I'm in the US, but I'm moving to Israel in a month and blah, blah, blah. And he says, all right, call me when you arrive here, and hung up. So I remember that clearly, and I thought I was very upset and this and that. But the reality is, I think that the preparation and the Aliyah prep is, I talked to Rachel when I flew to Brazil in September. It's probably not to say the other programs are not great, probably the most important program that was created at Gvaim, because if you don't start a year before to prepare for your Aliyah, you're going to have a very hard time. And there's many, many things you can do before you come. Here's what ChatGPT, by the way, suggested: research the market networks. Yeah, ChatGPT is kind of understanding the Olim already. I'll hire him for Gvaim. But the one thing that I would not recommend is to really, really, really apply for a job when you're abroad, for the reasons that I said. The moment you say, unless you say I'm landing, I hired one person who said I had a ticket bought, I arrive in 2 weeks, I have a place to live. Even then, it's a little bit challenging to give people job offers when they're not here. There is always people who change their plans the last minute. So short answer is, I don't think you need to necessarily apply for jobs before you arrive, but definitely you need to build your network, you need to do your preparation, and you need to start preparing the land so when you arrive that you can land some really nice interviews in the first 90 days. So, see, Rachel, I have your additional 3 minutes here. See, I even translated back from Portuguese to English. Remember, it was in Portuguese. So these are the tools that you had, and now are the tools that you have now. And the spirit is still the same. Like I said, there's a lot of programs. I was actually in a program when I came to Israel with Gvaim, just because I had to transition out of Microsoft. There was no Aliyah prep, or many of these programs are newer. I'm a mentor also the entrepreneurship program. So there's many programs, pre-Aliyah, post-Aliyah. There's also another resource. I work a lot with Startup Nation Center. If you don't know them, they are not-for-profit here in Israel, sponsored by a philanthropist. And they have a tool called the Startup Nationscentral.org. They're the website, and it's called Startup Nation Center Finder. It's free. It's improved a lot. They hired somebody to improve this tool. And the reason I'm mentioning that is besides the regular tools, if you are looking for a job in a startup, in a VC, whatever, they have done a really nice job of mapping out over 7,000 companies in Israel. You can get some basic information there. It's a start, but it's a very good. Some people tell me, I would like to work in retail or e-commerce. Where should I go? That's one of the places you can go and get some ideas from there. So I'm about to wrap up and open for questions. I would just like to conclude with some takeaways. You're here to inspire people that you talk to, so be prepared. And I would love, after this session, was a very short session, that you can provide your feedback to me, to Rachel, to everyone here, and then we'll see how the next one would be even better, Rachel, because you build up a lot of expectations for this, so God knows. Again, last few slides and I will shut up and take questions. This is something that's not new. This is from 2018. We mentioned the ChatGPT reminded me of this, so I went and looked for the slide. So you can see here how things are changing. If you really look at that, the same slide from 2022, the top 10 emerging roles, so this is worldwide, are completely different. They were not even in the list 4 years before. So AI, machine learning, data analyst, etc. Which again means two things. One, that those areas are hot now, and two, that in 4 years, maybe there will be some hot areas that you don't even know that they will be hot. So that's one thing. And in summary, you have a lot of things to deal with as Olim. I'm not going to tell you what those things are because you probably know. Sometimes there is a TED Talk I found, maybe you like, that says that sometimes people give you all this positive thinking and you get fed up, like, tell me to stop telling me it sucks right now. So sometimes this is my wording says sometimes you need to feel like crap before you can feel better. That's maybe a different motivational TED Talk. If you are suffering a bit now, listen to it and say, it's okay to go to the downs and I'm going to go to the ups. And somebody asked about how to remain positive and resilient. That's a very long topic. I can recommend you some podcasts, but this is just something that I took from another TED Talk about grit. Remember, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And this is something, again, for last slide, I took it from Microsoft. I use it a lot, and somehow for me it was obvious, but many people really liked it. This is what it was not a creation of Microsoft. This is Carol Dweck, who is a psychologist, created this concept of growth mindsets. And this is really what I think, especially us as immigrants, need to do all the time. If you come with your framework and it says, can't be, this Israelis are crazy. I used to do things this way and nothing works here. Yeah, it's true. But you know what? Now you chose to be here. So maybe you open your mind a little bit, bring your experience, and also adjust a little bit of things. There is quite a lot of room for that. Take some calculated risks. Build your story. Set yourself for success. And learn the rules of the game. You can change the game, but first learn the rules of the game. That was one of my last things. And don't try to solve the problem with the same ways you used to solve it elsewhere. You're not elsewhere, you're here. And now I will shut up and open for questions.
I'm telling that I used to travel 4 million miles for business. And I totally agree with you that communication skill is one of the most important to be successful. Sometimes I'm even playing golf with guys in Asia or in US to communicate with them. In Israel, I'm visiting two events, tech events or universities or techno hubs, etc., scientific centers. What is your experience? How you communicate for business in Israel and the US?
Like I said, I think that you need to be a lot more concise here in Israel. I probably would have to tell this whole presentation in not more than 5 minutes if I had to present to an audience of pure Israelis. Yeah, in all seriousness, I mean, yeah, you'll find people with more patience, less patience. But the reality is that, for example, a meeting that takes an hour in Brazil would probably take 15 minutes in Israel. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. It has pros and cons. But the reality is that you need to really get to your point very quickly. There's not much time to elaborate on all the pre-work you've done and this and that. You probably move it all to the appendix and get to the point first. I think that's probably the first thing. And the second is you need to be prepared for handling objections. I mean, the first thing you will hear here is 3 statements that sort of try and contradict what you just said. So either you come prepared with facts, or you listen to that if you think that is a valid perspective, and say, I will factor that in and come back with something else. You need to be agile to incorporate feedback, because very rarely you'll be completely uninterrupted and everything will be approved as is. That has been my experience, at least.
And which hotspots you are using to find new partners?
I personally use LinkedIn a lot. I use it daily. That's pretty much my main tool. I have, of course, some I would say hubs of professional networking. You know, I went to Wharton, so I'm part of the Wharton Leadership Club in Israel. I communicate with Wharton people all over the world. Microsoft alumni. I mean, there's lots of different groups that I belong to, but those are just because of my past experiences. So I try and leverage those as well.
So my question is, I got a kind of feeling that if we are speaking about sales career in Israeli high tech, usually Israeli people don't perceive background in Russia as strong enough to be a really good professional. Maybe I am not right. Maybe it's just a feeling, but I would like to hear your thoughts about it.
Honestly, I don't have much experience working with Russians on my team. I left Microsoft in 2019. By the way, I was responsible for Russia also. When I was at Microsoft, I had a small team in Russia, but obviously to manage the Russia and CIS region. When you come to Israel, there is no real rule. I think a good salesperson is a good salesperson, and we can talk about what a good salesperson is, but at the end of the day, they need to drive the results. Doesn't really matter where they come from. As we said, the language, of course, sometimes is a very important thing because the customers might require that. So obviously, if you're dealing with customers who speak Russian, that would be an advantage. If you're speaking with customers who don't, then you would, be more evaluated on whatever language that is required for the job itself. So I personally, at the time, my startup was not working in Russia, so I had to find people who spoke Japanese. I had to find people who spoke European languages, like Dutch, for example, German, and a bit in Latin America, French. So I really had to find people based on their language skills, not even their nationalities. Again, being a good salesperson has nothing to do with that. It's just that it's an add-on as you're dealing with different geographies. I try to allocate people who have the right language skill set for each region. So I really don't know the answer. I don't think it's either negative nor a positive view. I think it really depends on, if you were one of the best sales guys in Microsoft Russia, you probably would get a very good job. If you were not such a great sales guy in another country, then you wouldn't. So it really depends more on your skills and your language than anything else.
Beny, what's your biggest inspiration in your work? What drives you?
Two things. One, and they became big buzzwords, but I will explain you what I mean by that. One is impact, and two is learning. So impact means I work, for example, in artificial intelligence for healthcare. I believe artificial intelligence is really, really going to transform everything, for the good or for the worse, but we're hoping for the good. So I work hard on it. And my dad's a physician, and I faint when I see blood, so I like health. So I work in the healthcare space mainly, not only. And of course, saving lives is a very important thing. So I see a lot of impact in the work that I do, directly or indirectly. And learning, I learned. I just said I did an interview with somebody an hour before this call, and she asked me what was my main criteria for staying or quitting a job, and I learned it from a general manager I had at Microsoft, was also a Wharton classmate of mine, and he said, if you can't see now. If you think that in a year you won't be able to write a page saying what I've learned in this job in the last 12 months, probably you shouldn't stay on that job. And it has nothing to do with your salary, promotions, title. It has to do with learning. To me personally, I think we are in a job, besides providing for a family, to A, contribute to society, and B, to learn something new. And if I can't do one or the other, then it's not the ideal case for me.
And if you're working in healthcare and also AI, is there any chance that ChatGPT will go crazy if it is learning from everybody?
Yeah, I'm going to do a session. Somebody asked me, it's an hour-long discussion of some people on that. But the short answer is, yes, there is a possibility. Like I said, most things in life are possible. I don't think it's highly likely that it will happen. Theoretically, it's possible. But it's not possible because the machine will get a soul and get all these things that some people were mentioning. I don't believe that. I think it's in a very simplified way. I would say, most problems that we see in AI are problems that we should see in ourselves. So bias and this and that, all things are problems that humanity has. And the same way, it's a terrible analogy, but I will make it the same way. I try to teach my kids to be great people with great values, in my opinion, at least. When you train an AI system, you need to train it with examples, and you need to lead by example. And if you don't provide the right examples, the system might make different choices than you would expect. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of, it's a more complex topic than what I'm trying to summarize here. There's ethics and governance, and there's an initiative called Responsible AI that I've been part with. But yeah, there is a slight chance that could happen, but I think that hopefully we will not allow that to happen. Somebody was asking here, if you don't mind, I'll take a question on the chat about improvements in the career, like a master's or a PhD. If Israeli high-tech professionals stimulated. You guys from Gwen can tell me what your thoughts are. In my experience, I personally, somebody asked me about my PhD. Also. I started a PhD in it's actually in business innovation, but my area of research is AI in healthcare, of course, on the innovation space. And to be very honest, I don't think I need a PhD to do my job. I do it because I think it's I'm enjoying it, although it's super hard, and B, I'm thinking about my next 10 years, not what I'm doing today. So I think it's part of the, the Jewish DNA. You try. My grandfather used to tell me that learning doesn't take space in your brain. You can always learn more. I think if you can, you do that. It doesn't mean that you see doesn't mean that you get a higher salary or something tomorrow just because of that. But I think in the long run, it just adds to your options. Fabian was asking here about location. What's the best place to live in Israel to get a high-tech job? If it's mandatory to live in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem and pay a crazy rent. I'll share my experience, and you can feel free to share whatever statistics you have. I personally live in Tel Aviv. I worked in Haifa. That was my first job. The CEO actually asked me, "You realize you have to be in Haifa every day?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." I realized I was the only problem who said no problem there, the only person. It was sort of a problem. I spent an hour and a half each way every day. I didn't complain. I did it for 6 months, but my team was very upset because many sales and marketing people actually lived in Tel Aviv or other more central areas. This was before Corona, and he really wanted everybody in the office. So I don't know how it's nowadays, but long story short, I see also my time in Microsoft, the R&D center was in Herzliya, and it still is, but many other companies moved from Herzliya to Tel Aviv. So SimilarWeb and some other big companies are now at also Meta, Amazon, they all moved to the Sarona area. So I would say that everything is possible. I think that it's at least my experience, there is a higher concentration now of startups and even public companies in Tel Aviv than they were 5 years ago. So I know that rent's very hard, but a lot of people live in Givatayim, in Ramat Gan, which are also close. So I think definitely there is probably a stronger ecosystem in this area.
What do you think if I ask you about the most seldom and simultaneously most important skills and background for salesperson, which are really important, but you could seldomly meet in Israeli high tech?
So there's a long list, but I think at the end of the day, a really, really good salesperson, which is rare, by the way. Most people think they can sell. I didn't know anything about sales when I joined sales group at Microsoft, and I learned a lot there. There's an old way to sell and the new way to sell. The old way to sell is push, which is kind of the default way to do in Israel, which is frankly terrible. The good way to sell is called consultative sales, which is what we had to also relearn in Microsoft, because people also push you like crazy everywhere at that time, which means that you need to really do sort of the things that I told you about to do about your prospective client, to do it for your what they told you to do if you're a prospective employer, you need to do for your prospective client, meaning you need to do research, you need to come to the client, not talking about your product, how amazing it is, how great your startup is, nobody cares actually, is show that you understand their industry. If they are in a hospital, show that you understand their pains. Don't just tell them, I know your first pain is this because I saw a guy being fired for saying that in the CEO of the hospital. That's not my pain, and hung up the phone. So try to really understand the client. Once you understand the industry, their space, their challenges, their goals, then you need to really do a very smooth attempt to position your product into their needs, and not the opposite, not to throw him your product pitch to see if it sticks or not. So I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but it's not a push, it's a pull.
Yeah, it's absolutely clear. Yeah.
And again, but on the other hand, again, combining the cons and the pros of the Israeli culture, the pro is you need to tachlis, have a timeline and make sure that at some point either you close the deal or disengage, because you can't waste a year sometimes trying to close a deal that it's not sufficiently qualified. So there's a lot of skills in what I just said, but it's basically the ability to connect with people, to read between the lines. Not all cultures are so direct. So I know when people in Brazil tell me, oh yeah, it was a good call, I call them later, says, what was the main issue? And then he would tell me a lot of things they didn't like about it, but they never saw it in the first time. So you need to know how to gather the right information, the right time, and action it, and make sure that you very quickly put a plan to address their concerns. I call it objection handling. I had a session I gave sometimes called 5 things I learned in sales, and one of them is objection handling. Your customers will have many objections. They may tell you or they may never tell you, but you need to discover what they are quickly and address them. Otherwise, you're dead. And again, this all takes a lot of emotional intelligence, a little bit of strategy. It's not just call him again, call him again. I see people here just saying, just call him. I'm not calling this customer 5 times a week. I want to understand what's going on with the customer, first of all. But again, doesn't mean that you disengage for 3 months, because then it's all gone. So it's a very fine balance of being the results oriented, but at the same time, being able to diagnose. It's almost like being a doctor in a way. What's going on the other side? How can I unblock the issue? Is it the budget? Am I talking to the right person? I mean, there's a lot of things that you need to have the intelligence, and if you don't have it, you're really not doing a good job. Good luck to everyone. Congratulations to all of you. Just the fact you are here, not because of me, but because of the Aliyah Prep, is a great thing. I appreciate all the comments and the questions, and I saw many people already connected with me on LinkedIn. So I wish everyone best of luck, and we'll see each other at some point again.